Okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Board of Directors, State of Hawaii Department of Agriculture. I am the chair, Sharon Hurd. Prior to calling the meeting to order, Stephen Dalton will explain how the public can participate in this hybrid meeting, which can be accessed by video conference, telephone, or in person.
Good morning. As an attendee, your microphone will be automatically muted during the meeting unless you are providing testimony. For each agenda item you wish to testify on, please click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. Board staff will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chair, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish speaking in order to prevent audio feedback. When testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 2 minutes of testimony per agenda item. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify. Oh, sorry, and this is if you're joining by phone. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter the star and then 6 again to mute yourself. In the event that connectivity is lost and attempts to repair the connection exceed 30 minutes, the meeting may be terminated or continued to another date and time. Consult the webpage for updated information. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just a reminder that testifiers will have a 2-minute limit for testimony per agenda item. Calling the meeting to order at 9:07. Roll call vote. I'll take a roll call vote of the members present. When your name is called, please indicate your presence by here or present and state who, if anyone, over the age of 18 is present in the room with you. This also serves as a roll call vote. For each subsequent vote, I will ask if there are any objections or recusals. If there are none, then the motion will be approved on the same basis as this initial roll call. Sharon Hurd is here. Deputy Director Ryan Kanaka-Ole.
Present and alone.
Dr. Parwinder Rawal. Excused. Mark Takimoto on behalf of Director Tokioka Debet.
Present and alone.
Thank you, Mark. Diane Lay.
Present and alone.
Thank you, Diane. Vincent Mina.
Present and choke people.
Present. Choke people. Fred Cowell.
Present.
Randy Cabral.
Here.
Thank you. N. Young. Excuse. James Gomes.
Here.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for April 23rd meeting. May I have a motion to approve the April 23rd minutes?
So moved. Jimmy.
Thank you, Jimmy. And seconded
Second.
by Randy. Thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
We have a raised hand, but it's Daniel Oswald. Is he supposed to be an attendee or is he supposed to be a panelist?
Oh, Daniel,
He lowered his. Oh, he's raising it. Daniel Oswald, is he supposed to be a panelist?
he will be a board member effective July 1.
I see. Okay, so leave him in attendees.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We can certainly call on him if his hand is raised.
His hand is raised. I'll allow him to speak. I just called you forward, Mr. Oswald, if you wanted to say anything.
Nope. I guess I wasn't realizing that I didn't start until July, so I'll just listen in. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathaniel, Mr. Oswald. Anyone else from the public wish to give testimony?
No other hands raised.
Okay. Board discussion? No discussion from the board. Calling for the vote. Are there any objections or recusals? Hearing none, the
Chair-
motion to approve.
Oh, sorry,
Yes, sir.
Chair. As I did not attend that meeting, I would recuse myself. This is Mark Takimoto.
Okay, Mark, thank you, Mark.
Also, okay.
Okay, the motion to approve the minutes,
Roll call.
oh, roll call.
If there's not a unanimous
Okay,
agreement, it has to be a roll call vote.
thank you, Brian.
Sorry.
So Chair says aye, approves. Deputy Director Ryan Kanaka-Ole. Approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye,
Approving. Yes.
thank you. Dr. Gurwal is excused. Mark is recused. Diane Lay,
Aye.
thank you. Vincent?
Aye.
Fred Cowell?
Aye.
Randy Cabral?
Aye.
And Young, not present, excused. And Jimmy.
I do, aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Minutes are approved as submitted. Okay, the introductions, item 3, done. Item 4, communications from divisions and administrations. Moving to item A, from the Agricultural Loan Division. We have a request for approval of one Class A loan for Bamboo Farm and Sanctuary Partnership. May I have a motion to approve the request?
Motion to approve.
Thank you,
Diane.
Diane.
Second.
Second, Jimmy. And presentation by staff? Ag loan, okay. We have Jillian.
Good morning. I'm Jillian Scheibe. I'm with the Kona Agricultural Loan Office. Thank you, guys. I will be presenting the loan request for Bamboo Farm and Sanctuary Partnership between Jeffrey T. Allen and Catherine A. Clark, whom are the trustees of the respective trusts that are co-borrowing. They were requesting a Class A direct farm ownership loan in the amount of $124,000. The 31.993 fee simple farm can be found off of Ho'ia Road in Kohala. They specialize in nursery plants and sheep. This loan request will enable the applicants to pay off a balloon payment due on short-term financing and fully amortize the balance over the proposed term. The proposed term is 20 years with a fixed interest rate of 7.5%, monthly principal and interest payments of about $1,000 until maturity. The loan will be secured by a first position mortgage on the parcel, which has an assessed market land value of $1,137,000. The nearly 32-acre farm is broken into 2 main functions: a 19-acre pasture for sheep, and the other 10 acres are nursery and work buildings. The property's permanent structures include a 528 square foot wooden storage shed and a 336 square foot open carport. Irrigation is run throughout the entire property, with 10 acres fully irrigated and the other 20 acres only partially irrigated. The perimeter is fenced with pig-proof fencing. Also along the boundary, there's a dense tree line to act as both a windbreak and their mature plant stock. The loan will be further secured by a first position lien financing statement on all crops, accounts, inventory, farm equipment, and tools, and we're requesting their personal guarantees. Mr. Allen and Ms. Clark started farming this parcel over 2 decades ago, initially focusing on removing invasive plants, establishing the windbreaks by planting over 2,000 trees, and revitalizing the soil's health to more arable land. During their initial push to restore the soil health, they created their own soil amendments, bokashi and biochar, which they began marketing in addition to perennial peanut and Bermuda grass. By 2015, they were selling mostly ground covers, some specialty plants such as mock orange, foxtail palms, and bamboos. Following the loss of the Kohala ditch water and droughts, they adapted their inventory to include less water-intensive nursery plants and have improved the irrigation cycling for the ground cover crops to use less water. In 2023, they selectively harvested bamboo and trees, increasing their feed pile to render into biochar inventory. If awarded, Bamboo Farm and Sanctuary Partnership will be able to continue to provide high-quality nursery plants, hair sheep, and soil amendments to Hawaii Island farmers, landscapers, and residents. Staff recommends approval of the loan request.
Thank you, Jillian. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, board discussion.
Yes, Chair.
Vince?
Are they producing biochar on the property?
Yes, they are.
Are they using kilns for that, or how are they producing the biochar?
He created his own kiln and has the massive heat pile on the kiln on property.
Sorry, that's my thing.
Jillian, do you mind speaking up a little bit?
Sorry, just let me know. Yes, he has his own kiln and work shed that he does all of his work out of.
Was that an answer to your question? Yes, okay. Further board discussion?
Question.
Randy?
Chair. The 7.5%, how is that determined? Refresh my memory.
So that's going to be statutorily determined, right? So I would have to refer back to the statutes, but according to one of them, essentially it can be up to 7.5% or 1% below prime. And unfortunately, prime is greater than. So we are set at 7.5, and that's determined on the half year mark. So we'll be coming up onto a new determination soon. But as of now, that one's from January 1st.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If legislature had passed the so-called 4% cap, then this would have applied here, right? Yeah, 7.5 is pretty damn steep.
Mhm.
So hopefully, we can pursue that again next session.
Without tipping any hands, we will be considering again, resubmit them.
Chair,
Yes,
can I have one more? So do you know what the total cost of that loan will be after 20 years?
Yes.
With it being, it's,
So the total cost is going to be $239,744 and some change, which is why we did a 20-year term versus like a 30-year or something more because of the interest rate. And in discussion with borrowers, it made the most sense.
thank you.
okay, thank you, Vince. Further board discussion? No, okay. Calling for the vote. Are there objections? Wait a minute. Yep. Are there any objections or recusals? Hearing none. The motion is approved. It's a unanimous decision to approve the loan as recommended. Okay, item B. Is there discussion? Item B, Agricultural Resource Management Division. It's a resubmittal. Request for approval to award a lease to A. Asquith, Kapa'a, Kabaihau, Island of Kauai. May I have a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
So we have Jimmy and Vince. Thank you. Presentation by staff.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. My name is Linda Marai. I'm a property manager with the Ag Resource Management Division. Again, this, as Chair said, this is a resubmittal. It's a request for approval to award a lease to A. Asquith for TMK number 44349, located at Kapa'a on the island of Hawaii. The land area for this parcel is 25.710 gross acres. The base annual rental as determined by independent appraisal is $303 per annum. Some background, the Agricultural Resource Management Division received the vacant Kapa'a, Hawaii parcel from the Department of Land and Natural Resources in 2011. A public notice was published on October 6, 2023, announcing the subject parcel is available for lease. The division received a total of 2 applications for the vacant land, of which one applicant qualified to bid. Staff determined that the applicant, Adam Asquith, qualified as a bona fide farmer with more than 2 years of intensive farming experience and meets eligibility residency requirements of the non-agricultural parklands program. A recommendation is the Board of Agriculture approve issuance of the appropriate right of entry document to the successful awardee for the lot in accordance with 4-158-22 HAR and subsequently issue the appropriate general lease to the completion, subject to the completion of the lease prerequisites. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, board discussion? Vincent?
Thank you, Chair. I'm totally supportive of this. If Adam is okay with the $300 per annum is what came up on, I'd be okay with that. Except that I really feel that this should be like $1 a year. People don't realize what it takes to grow taro in a Lo'i situation. And I'm really impressed with the fact that Adam's doing what he's doing there. One of the biggest failings I feel here in Hawaii with agriculture is not valuing the host culture's crop and taro. And so I'm really happy that, this is moving forward, and thank you, Linda, for all the work there. And Adam, is Adam here?
I think he is.
Could you ask Adam to come forward, please?
Recognizing Adam?
Adam?
He's with you.
He's on mute.
He's with Eve.
Yeah.
Hello, this is
Hi, Adam.
Adam.
Adam, this is Vincent Mina. Could you please explain the infrastructure that you're putting in to make this land work as far as the Lo'i and planting Lo'i kalo?
Sure, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You know, it takes really unusual land situations and infrastructure to grow kalo. They obviously were all over the state, but most of them had been abandoned. Most of them do not use the ladder plantation irrigation system. They were the traditional taro Hawai or the rice systems utilized and modified those also. And that's one of the reasons our taro production areas have shrunk down to really just 2 commercial areas in the state, KNI, a little bit left in Waipio, but mostly and then Honolulu on the North Shore. So this would be unusual in the fact that we would actually be bringing back albeit small, regional production center. And we can do that in this area because there are there's the remaining, well, that area was traditionally spring fed. There are Kuleana taro production awards in that valley and further down. But that valley and that the state parcel can be and is fed by the state irrigation system that the plantation built. So that system can be fed and is fed right now. It's still functioning with water from Kapaa Stream. And so that in itself makes the whole project viable. Without that, it would be really, really limited, at least taro production. You could grow bananas down there or something else. So we are blessed that we have infrastructure remaining in that area to provide sufficient water to grow taro. That said, there's nothing remaining from any of the traditional original taro patches. So it's basically it's going to be a 20-year construction project. There's going to be years of plantable area, but all that has to be, roads have to be put in, culverts, banks, and that can only start after we continue to drop the water level all the way down to the bypass road. So that's going to take another year, even before the area is dry enough to begin work. But I'm not complaining. I've had to chase land and water all over the island for 30 years. So if it ends up that we're granted a permanent home to rebuild some taro infrastructure, then that's how I'm going to spend the rest of my life.
Thank you, Adam. And so this is a 35-year lease. How do we keep this in perpetuity? And what are we gonna have to go through to make sure that all that he's doing
Was,
as a traditional area?
thank you for that question. Well, this lease would be in the non-agricultural parklands program. So actually, a lease can be extended for a maximum of 65 years as long as the lessee is in compliance with the lease. So there's, you know, an additional 30
Extends it
years
out.
after that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And Adam, in your management practices, when you're planting your taro, how do you manage the banks? Because I know it's a big issue around weed control and such.
It is, you know, we started years ago. One of the areas that we farmed, there was an existing rancher who ran goats, and the goats seemed to do a pretty good job. So we began running goats, but you know, goats will go through a fence to get a parking lot when they have perfectly good grass on the other side of the fence. So we've kind of moved to sheep. Sheep are a lot dumber but easier to manage than goats, and so that's pretty much what we do. We run sheep on the banks, and they do a phenomenal job.
And are you processing your taro?
So we do, the way I've run, you know, my operation for 30 years is we do the bulk production goes to smaller processors around the state. I have about half a dozen small family businesses that we ship the raw taro to keep their businesses going. We also make our own poi just with our volunteers, and that's pretty much been my take home, my beer money for 20 years. Yes.
Well, I really applaud your efforts, and hopefully you can be seen as a model here in Hawaii to continue with taro production in a way that best serves the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Chair.
Further board discussion, Jimmy?
Since in perpetuity, Vince, you were talking about something like that, can we give this gentleman 65 years max?
Isn't it the 5 to 10 year rule for a non-ag park? Jimmy's asking if we can grant it 65 years now.
It's up to the board.
Oh, really?
Right, that's what we did the last time.
Cool.
I'd like,
Ocean?
I would first double check with Mr. Asquith.
Oh, that's true too.
Adam, do you hear that?
Yeah, let me before you make that decision or proposal, let me share with you, if I may, a couple of examples of how important, whether it's to me or someone else, the long-term security of the taro production areas. And another part of my business that not mine personally, my partners are Kenui and Pomai Kekaula, who run processing facility on Oahu. And they've grown from literally selling poi on the side of the road to their product is in Times Market and everywhere else. Several years ago, they got a contract to have their kulolo in 7-Eleven, a big move. Within a month or two of getting that contract, there were huge floods in Honolulu. No taro going to come out of there for, at least 2 months. They have to call corporate 7-Eleven and go, oh, the flood, we're not going to be able to. Corporate 7-Eleven goes, what? We've never heard of Honolulu. We don't care. You have your product on that shelf or you lose the space. So when it comes to taro, we're dealing with a tiny little economic circle. And we've got a foot in the boonies of Wainiha with the small taro producers and dealing with corporate 7-Eleven for distribution to consumers in Waianae and Kalihi. So it is very difficult, not only for the farmers, but our processors and our distributors to have a consistent, reliable supply of taro to grow their businesses. And so what you're proposing is a huge step towards making the entire economic circle around taro a little bit more economically sustainable. If we have another dedicated area, even if it's only another 15 acres of production, it is huge economically for the taro industry. So thank you for even considering that.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, Mr. Asquith, is that a yes?
yes, it's fine.
Yes, it is. It is a yes.
It is a yes, Adam, that you would be interested in 65 years rather than 35. Is that correct?
That is, and all the processors who receive our taro, yes, from all of them. They need that production security.
Then the motion and the second can be amended,
Do I have to have a motion to amend that?
or the original move on to the second, maybe simply.
I move to, amend the motion from 35 years to 65 years.
No second.
Any objections or recusals to that amendment to the motion?
Diane, the original second.
Diane, were you the Marcy?
I don't believe so.
So I can recuse that. I mean.
You can move to amend.
Move to amend.
Thank you.
The second that's being honest. This,
Oh, yeah, I was the original second. Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yes, okay.
Chair, it was not me.
No, it was
Okay.
me.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the original motion to extend the lease from 35 years to 65 years. Taking the vote, any objections or recusals to that motion? Hearing none. The board will be voting on the 65 years. Okay, so the motion has been changed to amend the lease from 35 years to 65 years, which is the maximum of that lease. Any objections or recusals to that?
Question.
Oh, yes.
Before we take a vote. Linda, could you explain the prerequisite requirements? Since it's a condition he has to meet before he can get the lease.
Oh, okay, sure. He would make sure he has his insurance in place and he's applied as a cooperator for his conservation plan, right? And paid his initial,
So it's just routine stuff,
yeah, very
nothing
routine things,
special.
nothing out of the ordinary, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? Hearing, seeing none. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Congratulations, Adam. Right on, Adam.
Okay, on to
Thank you.
item B. I'm sorry, B2, request for acceptance of annual lease rent amounts as determined by independent appraisal for rent reopenings and vacant land for various lots located statewide. Presentation by staff. Wait a minute. May I have a motion to approve the request?
So move, Jimmy.
Thank you, Jimmy. Second?
Second.
Second by Fred. Thank you. Presentation by staff.
Good morning,
Good
Chairperson,
morning.
members of the board. My name is Roy Hasegawa, Property Manager with the Agriculture Resource Management Division. The Board of Agriculture is required to establish and approve annual lease rentals by independent appraisal for issuance and issuance of reopenings. The new lease rents are presented in the table attached as Exhibit A. Staff believes the new rental rates are fair and recommends the board accept the new rental values. Thank you.
You. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Steve. And board discussion. Thank you, Randy.
Right. I mean, obviously, some of the increases are pretty substantial. Example, this one, that's like 300 some percent, 318% increase for change. Could you explain why there's such a huge range in changes and then some, you know, in Molokai, for example, everything went down? Is there an explanation for that?
Yes, I believe the appraiser is online. We could ask him how the calculations are determined.
Calling the appraiser forward.
Check them on ACN.
Yeah.
You can proceed, Ted. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Ted Yamamura with ACM Consultants.
Ted, could you speak up just a little bit? Thank you.
Sure. Let's see, is this helping?
Better? A little bit louder.
Even as possible to turn this up.
This is up all the way. I mean, it's just has to do with their mic.
Closer to the mic, Ted, if you could.
I'm trying to do that now.
Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, Ted, I hear you better.
Okay, great. Please let me know if I need to adjust the mic again.
Got just your teeth.
How can I answer your question now? What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question was that there's some huge increases, right, in some of the lease rents. For example, this one that's 318% increase. Pretty much across the board in Oahu increases, and then Molokai, everyone went down. Could you explain why the changes?
Sure, great questions. If I may start with Molokai. And in fact, let me even backtrack a little further than that. Ground rents on reopenings are based on land values at the time of reopening. So ground rents are a function of land values at time of reopening. On Molokai, land values decreased, which resulted in decreased ground rents for the reopenings. For Waimanalo, land values have, increase is not even a proper term. They've just skyrocketed over the past few years. And so due to that increase in land values, ground rents during the reopenings have all increased substantially. Now, as far as certain leases that are experiencing, let's say, 300% increases, I don't know what the what happened during the prior rent reopenings or resets were. But that would be an outlier, and there must have been some reason for it 10 years ago. But as far as the current rent is concerned, it is consistent with how we apply the methodology to the current land market values. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but that's the explanation for it.
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Vince?
Yeah, sure. Ted, it's kind of a catch-22, yeah? In these agricultural areas that are productive and the land becomes more valuable because for whatever other reason, it's kind of squeezing out the agriculture, you know? So how do we address that? I mean, how can that be addressed in a way that we don't squeeze agriculture out of places that people buy because of the view or the proximity to what raises the land value?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head on
Just
that question.
I mean, it's a question that I don't know, you know, it's above your pay grade in a sense. I get it. I mean, it kind of puzzles me to think, how do we keep agriculture from being squeezed out of these areas that are prime agricultural lands?
Well, it starts with the leases, unfortunately, and the verbiage or the language in the leases, which calls for determination of fair market rents. And typically the appraisal methodology to determine that would be a percentage rate of return on the fee simple value of the land.
Sure.
So there's a direct nexus between land value and ground rent. Until the language in the leases are changed or revised, the appraiser must follow generally accepted appraisal principles, which determines ground rent. And you're right, to give you a case in point, a 2 acre, let's say a 2.5 acre land parcel in Waimanalo sold in June of 2023 for $1.2 million in Waimanalo. And so we picked that up as a land transaction comparable. And then if you apply a rate of return on that, it results in those, very, very high ground rents, which are detrimental, I understand, and I agree, to the farmers.
Right, yeah, thank you. But Brian, how does that get addressed then? Where does that get addressed? In statute or?
I believe fair market value is part of the statutory provisions. So.
I always thought though that, Brian, that the appraisal was based on the agricultural value and not the so-called fair market value as far as real estate. Am I wrong?
No, it should be, Ted, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it should be the fair market value of of a land in which agriculture is required.
Well, the ag lands in Waimanalo, for example, are all zoned agriculture, or some of them are zoned country, but the majority are zoned agriculture. And so there's no land use designation that says this parcel is zoned agriculture and dedicated to agriculture only, unless you go into IAL. And so there's no way, I know what you're saying, but there's no way for the appraiser to differentiate a parcel that must be used for ag versus a parcel that can be used for ag, as well as other uses, permitted uses, such as residential dwellings.
So Ted, if I understand it correctly, what you're saying is you're comparing the DOA's agricultural land to all other agricultural land, regardless of the other uses on those agricultural lands.
Exactly. Unless you have a better way of selecting land comparables, we typically go with the underlying zoning, which is similar to the subject property, which is why we select only ag comparables. We have nothing else to use here as an appraiser.
Can I ask, to the extent agricultural land is used for non-agricultural purposes, does that inflate, or does that potentially inflate the value of agricultural land in that area?
Well, we only select vacant land transactions. So there are no other alternative uses on the land at time of sale. So it's vacant. And we are appraising for the subject leases anyway. We are appraising lands as though vacant. So we're comparing apples to apples here.
No, maybe the answer should be similar to what we're talking about, the interest rate. That there should be not necessarily a cap, but on the whole thing, but a cap on the increase every year, so that you have an idea of what your increase is gonna be. So I can't imagine, a 300% increase in your lease rent if you're not gonna be able to make up the difference in profit somehow. So it's just like Ben said, it's just a stab in the back for ag.
Recognizing Brian Cow.
Brian Cow, Administrator, Agricultural Management Division, Department of Ag. I wanted to just quickly put in a comment on the increases. So rental increases do not happen every year, right? So on a lease, typically rental reopening increases happen every either 15 or 10 years. During the span of the tenant's lease, that is in between the reopenings, there is 0% increase on the lease. And that's why you're seeing a lot of times these relatively large percentage increases, because there's zero. So from the time of the original reopening or the original lease, in certain cases, through the first, second, or third or subsequent reopening, they have essentially been, every year that goes on, it's discounted for whatever increase in value that that property has for that particular year. So that does lead to a substantial, many times substantial increase to 300% when it does reopen. So that's one thing I wanted to point out there. The other thing is, while I agree, the impact is drastic sometimes on that reopening year, whether it's the 15th year or the 10th year or whatever afterward, it's not a surprise, right, to the tenant. The amount could potentially be a surprise, but if they're monitoring, then it shouldn't be a huge surprise. The reopening terms are clearly laid out in their leases, though. I'm not saying that it's a good or a bad thing, but I wanted to make it clear as a recognition thing that there is a benefit, the way our leases currently are rented, that is heavily biased for the tenant in this case, because there is zero rent increase between the adjustments of their rent.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's just that if I was a farmer and I anticipated, okay, I'm gonna get 50% increase, and all of a sudden it's 300%, then, you know, you haven't planned for that increase, and that can throw you completely off. But if I knew that my lease cannot increase more than this amount, then I can plan accordingly. If it's less, then fine, but if it's more, it just throws off your whole business plan.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I do. The other issue that I want to put out there is that as Mr. Yamamura has said, the rents themselves are categorized by the lowest value that we could place on a parcel. In other words, essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, the appraisal is based on unimproved lands and vacant lands. So even if there is an improvement, or the business has been there for 30 years or 40 years, we're not addressing the impact of that business on the rental reopening. So every appraisal is based on the absolute least amount that we can come up with. It's not addressing the percentage increase that you're discussing, and I completely agree with that. However, the staff, the way the program operates is a special fund, and the special fund has to show that it maintains the cash flow in order to pay for itself. That's essentially what the special fund means, is we have to pay for ourselves. We don't generate much of a surplus at any given year. So if our incomes are limited, if our increases are limited to, say, 50%, 25%, or something like that, if the cumulative rate of inflation or our costs has gone up beyond that in that 10 or that 15-year period, then every time segment thereafter leaves the program falling further and further and further and further behind. And again, I'm not trying to justify it, I'm not trying to argue for it. I just want whatever decisions that come out of this meeting, whether it's before the legislature or additional discussions before this board, to recognize that there are impacts to making a decision one way or another.
Yeah, I think the flaw in the whole thing is like your water rates, right? You need that to pay for the department's expenses, but if the expenses came out of the general fund and not, dependent on lease rents or water rates or whatever, then that would put the department in a whole lot better light. If we could do that, then it wouldn't matter so much, right? The increases, but it's not a simple solution, obviously, but it's something on the long term should be considered, I think, for the department. That general fund should pay for everything, so that the farmer does have some sort of incentive to stay in business.
Yeah, because last time I checked, farmers aren't growing widgets. You know, no, in the spirit, and I appreciate, I'm not here to kill the messenger, I'm just looking at what happens when we get crop loss. You know, and that happens. It's a matter of course, we have to build our businesses around figuring that out, you know? And we're feeding people, so this is what I just don't, I've been trying to wrap my head around all these years of being on the board, as to how we can find ways to not get on the farmers' backs. And so, you know, you're doing great work. You guys are doing great work and under the parameters you have. So it really gets back to the legislature, right? And Randy, you're talking about the general fund as opposed to
Special.
yeah. So I just, yeah, Jimmy.
I'm just talking about what you just said, the farmer, what about the rancher?
Right,
You
well,
know, when he's gonna destock.
same breath.
When he's gonna
Farmer,
destock
rancher.
on the property that he has, that he's paying the lease, you hit a drought. And from the amount that you have, your carrying capacity goes down so much, you know, you're selling units, you're selling pairs. $100 just because it's a drought. There's no way that you can afford feed or supplement them because you can't, you're just in a drought. And then when the county comes back and they give you certain, like for Maui, shortage 1, shortage 2, and you're gonna cut back 10%, but you're gonna tell your cattle, you're gonna cut back, you cannot drink today, you drink every other day.
Just to clarify, Jimmy, when I say farmer, I'm talking rancher,
Yeah.
nurseryman,
Yeah.
all inclusive, so not necessarily just the farmer that's growing a crop.
So again, that's why I wanted to ask Brian, how does this get addressed? How does this get addressed moving forward? To where there's a flaw in the system. I mean, that's a great point, Randy, brings up regarding how do you build your business around not knowing what the percentage rate's gonna be?
Yeah, it would be legislative. And the legislative issue would involve both, whatever the proposed fix would be. So if the proposed fix was a price increase cap, or a different methodology of appraisal, then you'd also have to look at the issue of funding, since that would affect funding. How do you then get, you know, general funds to pay for a portion of the program that's intended to help the agricultural industry? So, but you would have to go and move the bill and see what happens. Pass that.
Sure. We have a senator here, maybe he can answer it.
I'm happy to answer it.
Senator, recognizing Senator Jarrett Keokalole.
Chair, members, happy to entertain questions.
I think the question was, how would a bill how would a bill go over to cap the interest rate, or I'm sorry, the lease rent rate for agricultural land?
This would be on a lease renewal.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think it goes beyond that though, Senator. You know, right now, the department has to generate funds in order to pay for part of the program. But if it came out of general funds, then the lease rent wouldn't matter so much, right? That you have to increase every year to be able to pay a percentage of the operation and increase water rates to pay for the maintenance of the irrigation system. Do you think it's possible that the department could be funded out of general funds instead of department relying on lease rents and water rates to be able to pay for the?
I think it's certainly possible. It's always a challenge to advocate successfully for more appropriations of general fund monies for the Department of Agriculture. We just went through that this year on invasives, which I was intended to talk about later in the agenda when appropriate. I think one of the other questions that I have, so the short answer is yes, it's always possible. As you folks who've been active at the legislature know, it takes a great deal of organization and some luck in order to attain permanent appropriation increases for whatever program for the department, depending on whatever else is going on in the legislature in a given year. I think we have been active on lease issues, especially for farmers over the years. The question that came to my mind in hearing this discussion, because I'm unfamiliar with the agenda item outside of what I just listened to, is where trouble often occurs in these lease conversations, mostly when it comes to DLNR leases, are when you're talking about a renewal, there are specific processes that were put in place in the law to ensure that the public's interest is accounted for when it comes to the leasing of state lands. And that's where things get a little itchy. The public deserves its fair compensation for the utilization of those lands. And so I think it would probably warrant time and attention on how things like maybe graduated lease increases after a renewal might serve the public's interest in food security, or, you know, the development or resilience of agriculture as an industry. But those issues, I would assume, need to be fleshed out and balanced appropriately, because that's often where the DHHL, DLNR, when those lease renewal issues come up and the tenants come up for renewal and they want their rents to be maintained the same way they were when they got the lease 30 years ago, that's when the advocates on the other side come in and go, well, then the taxpayers are not getting their fair share in rent. So that's where my mind went to in this conversation. But again, things like maybe like what you suggested, perhaps a tiered increase over time based off of the appraised value is something that could be proposed legislatively, and I don't see that. Yeah, I don't think that would be overly controversial.
Senator, thank you for being here. I've been farming for 30 years, and for the past 20 of those years, I've been involved politically. And every time I go back to the legislature, it's always been, we have less money this year to work with. And our agricultural budget's less than 0.5%. And so I've been advocating for the legislature to be utilized as a policymaker to invite in private sector support to pay for the infrastructure that we're talking about. So it's not on the farmers' backs. And have you heard of anything of going on and being floated like that in the legislature, or any, because it seems to me as though I don't want to look at the legislature for money. I want it to come from the billionaires out there who just will do it as a legacy. No return on investment. They just have their names on it. You know, the Mercedes Dome in New Orleans or whatever, you know, to be able to support an agricultural system that honors the farmers and the ranchers' ability to actually feed people. So I don't, you know, it seems like it's a business, of course, but it just seems like we're different. We're not focusing in on the importance of what agriculture truly means to the local community here, you know? And so I just, I would like to see the legislature be more about policy and protecting from any kind of a corporate takeover or co-operative of the system, you know? And just have it to be where they're supporting local agriculture in a way that, you know, farmers and ranchers can do what they love to do without having all these kind of increases that affect their ability to do so.
Sure, and I can appreciate your,
because it's a cultural,
frustration.
It's a cultural thing. Okay, agriculture, you know, being a living thing, that's what I'm speaking about, you know, to keep that living thing alive. And yeah,
Certainly. And I have colleagues that I'm very close to that served on this board that are outspoken, sometimes too much outspoken on issues. I am not a farmer. I'm not familiar with your life, with your livelihood, right? But I think we are very receptive to those discussions. But we're also receptive to discussions from other members of the public on issues. So I think ultimately, you know, the hardest part of your question is the how. I don't think it's a whether or not we should. If you were to ask me in general, do I support agriculture? Absolutely. Do I support local farmers? Absolutely. Well, why don't you help them? Okay, well, if you can put something before me that specifies how, then I can take that and I can run it past the lawyers and see what obstacles and what competing interests it runs up against. And then we can start to try and craft a solution. So if the solution being sought, the solutions need to be very specific. That's just the way the legislative process goes. And it gets complicated and difficult, and it's a factor of time and effort and capacity. Usually, from my experience, the Farm Bureau will come forward every year with a package of bills. In the past, I've told other industries, you guys should number them the way the Farm Bureau, I don't know if they do that every year, but I remember one year I got a flyer and it had these are 1 through 10, right? So when you come away with 2, 6, 7, 9, at least you got something. Other industries aren't even able to achieve that because they don't have the same type of goodwill attached to their business as ag does. So if there are specific efforts that you would like us to entertain, I'm happy to take that back. And then it's just a function of the legislative process, right? That's why I'm sort of glamming on to this idea of maybe a graduated tiered increase based off of a cap that can be projected, because I think it would be a difficult conversation to have at the legislature that ag leases should just get perpetual capped rents, right? I think that would probably initiate opposition or concern from other areas of the public, specifically the guys who have DL&R leases. We go, that's not fair, right? So it's just a matter of how, and I don't want to belabor them.
No, I understand. And Chair, if I could follow up, please. Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, you take it. And, you know, not being a farmer, you know, I appreciate where you're coming from in that spirit, you know, we live it, you know? And, so that's where I really would like to see it, the monopoly being defaulted to the farmer and the rancher here in the islands, as opposed to legislative activity. And I'm not seeing it. I haven't seen it. And it's sad because we're feeding people, for God's sake, you know? And so that's where I stand.
Well, so if I might offer, and then I'll stop, you know, part of why I am here is because you are the Board of Agriculture. You are the recognized experts that have been confirmed by the Senate and serve the public's interest in matters of agriculture. So on items of, you are the subject matter experts, right? So again, I look to you on helping identify the problem. And then I'm happy to use my capacity as much as it's available to help navigate and craft a solution and organize toward achieving that solution. It's always going to be a challenge at the legislature. None of you guys are surprised to hear me say that, right? But you do have certain advantages in this industry. One of them that's very powerful is goodwill around your industry. People do not like to hear farmers going out of business, losing their land, losing their leases because of things that can be corrected. So I'm happy to make myself available going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. very
I
much.
think the other part though, you know, that we have policies and statutes in place that to me are detrimental to the success of farmers. For example, if I have a pasture lease, right, and I wanted to put beehives on it and raise honey because I've got lehua and other, I'm not allowed to do it because pasture is pasture. You're not allowed to put honeybees on it. If I have a irrigation system where I could do hydropower, unless it's only for my use, I can't do it and sell it to the utility and have another profit picture in there. So it doesn't make sense to me in my mind that, you know, we limit ourselves, but maybe it's something that, you know, we need to look at and see within the department, what policies and statutes actually negatively impact the success of farmers and ranchers and nurserymen.
I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt just briefly, the subject matter of the agenda
Discuss.
is whether to increase the grants, and I think the past conversation impacted that. So if I just could ask you to focus back on the agenda item.
Details.
Thank you,
and
Randy.
details.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Oh,
He's the guy.
who stepped out? Okay,
I'm sorry.
so any further board discussion on the motion to increase the rents. Any further discussion on that? No, hearing, seeing none. Can you call for the vote? Are there any objections or recusals to the motion? No, hearing none, then the motion is approved, unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roy. Okay, moving on to item 3. I'm sorry, yeah. D3. That would be, where are you gonna do that? Okay, that would be request for approval for the transfer of public lands from the Department of Land and Natural Resources to the Department of Agriculture pursuant to Act 90, SLH 2003. Codified as Chapter 166E, Hawaii Revised Statutes. May I have a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Second.
Thank you, Randy, for the second, and presentation by staff.
In accordance with provisions of Chapter 166E, Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Board of Agriculture must mutually approve the selected encumbrances for transfer. Staff has reviewed the list of proposed encumbrances and performed its due diligence. Staff recommends that the Board of Agriculture approve the transfer of the 2 encumbrances on this page on the island of Oahu as listed. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone from the public wish to provide testimony?
Yes, there's a hand raised.
There is a hand raised.
I'd like to call forward Nicole Galase.
Nicole?
Hello, thank you, Chair Hurd and members of the board. Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. I'm testifying in support of the approval for the transfer to DOA. Bud and Katie Gibson, they've been stewarding this land for decades, and it's not only in agricultural production, but they are also a benefit to the public as keeping this as a space to hold community events. As you know, the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council has prioritized the transfer of these lands because Act 90 was intended to keep ag lands and ag production, and these parcels should definitely be under DOA for the activities they lead. If there are any questions, I would highly recommend speaking directly with Bud and Katie Gibson. Mahalo.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other comments from the public?
There are no other hand raised.
Thank you. In that case, board discussion.
Question.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
We've had the appraisal done, yeah, on the property by ACM, by Ted. Yes, when do you think we could have a copy of that, or Mr. Gibson have a copy of that? Board member.
Well, we're here to discuss the transfer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But moving
Any-
forward, after that,
After that,
when can this be brought back to the board? How soon?
how soon, hasn't been determined yet.
So we could take another 6 months for this?
Unknown.
Unknown. Sure? No.
Unknown. Do you have the appraisal?
Not with me.
Not yet. Oh, but I mean, the appraisal has been completed.
I believe so, yes.
Is it reasonable to assume we can have this done sooner than 6 months?
I think the issue is there's negotiations going on. And they don't know how long that'll take. You could put a certain point, I suppose, and ask. Negotiations be cut short. But I think the concept is, there's an appraisal that has been done, has been completed.
Has been completed.
So the appraisal's been completed. They've presented it to Mr. Gibson?
No.
No.
Okay, so it's going to be presented to Mr. Gibson. He still has an opportunity to say no. And then there may be further discussions after that, in addition to the issue of what do we do about the past one. I think if
he submitted a letter already about them.
Right, and so if he says, for example, I saw the appraisal, I'm happy with it. I will use this appraisal for past rent and future rent. I suspect it will be relatively short coming back. If he says, no, it's just way too high, I disagree, then it will take much longer. I think that's why they're saying they don't know.
I think the proposal was already submitted to the department from Bud Gibson. And I believe the proposal was actually higher than the appraisal.
That's correct.
So I don't see any hang up on the whole thing. So it's a matter of them negotiating the new lease or trying to work together the lease. So I don't know why it would take. If you have all the documentation and everything's on the table and agreed to and whatnot, then it shouldn't take long to complete, huh, Roy? I mean, you should be able to get that done within a month.
That's, the negotiations above what I'm doing. I'm here to present the transfer.
No, I know, but I'm just
But,
asking you a question. If you have everything down, would you be able to get it done within a month?
Everything, several months maybe.
Several
Maybe not.
months.
Maybe not more.
Perhaps if I could make a suggestion, since there seems to be a lack of information. Perhaps what you may want to ask for is a status report, regardless of the outcome. Just so you can be kept apprised of what's going on.
I would like,
Is that,
I would like that. I would request that.
so, for another agenda, for the next agenda or the agenda after, which one of those two at least.
Okay. Okay,
Should
well,
have a status update.
yeah,
It might be short, it might be long. We'll have to see what the status is, but regardless, we'll get a status update.
in recognition of all the work that the Ag Resource Management Group have to do, they're tasked to do. Please consider the 1 month status report. I know you're tasked to do so much right now, but this has been ongoing, I guess, since what, 2017?
2017.
So appreciate it, Roy. Thank you very much. And I know you guys are super duper busy. But appreciate that. Okay. Any other board discussion? Hearing none, we will call for the vote. Any objections or recusals to accepting the motion to accept the transfer of the lands? Hearing none, the motion is approved and unanimously. Thank you very much. Oh, moving on to item B4. Request for approval to consent to assignment of general lease number S-4459, Paul Jerome Balberti and Cirilla Balberti, lesser assignor. And SL Kuahara Partners LLC, assignee. May I have,
Brandy up.
Yes.
say again?
Brandy, I know.
Oh, Brandy, okay. Well, may I have a motion to approve the request?
So.
Thank you, Fred.
Second.
Second, Jimmy. Okay, presentation by Brandy. There she is.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I am Brandy Ayo, Property Manager with the ARM Division on the Big Island. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so on October 29th, 1975, the Board of Land and Natural Resources awarded general lease S4459 to Lani A. Ignacio. By Mesne assignment, general lease 4459 was assigned to Paul Jerome Balberti and Cirilla Balberti in August of 1997. General lease 4459 was just transferred to the Department of Ag via Executive Order 4703 on January 31st, 2024 for agricultural purposes. Due to limited financial resources, Mr. and Mrs. Balberti were never able to fully utilize the property for ag purposes. Therefore, in accordance with the HAR and the terms of the subject lease, Mr. and Mrs. Balberti are requesting to assign general lease 4459 to SL Kuahara Partners LLC. The assignment will include a farm dwelling and a packing shed. Sandy Kuahara has been the owner and operator of SL Kuahara Partners since December of 2006. She has over 30 years of experience in the commercial farming industry. Sandy is the current lessee of General Lease 5538 under the Department of Agriculture, where she grows a wide range of landscaping plants. This property, or the subject property, is in this property is in close proximity to the subject parcel. SL Kuahara Partners wishes to expand its production area and will utilize the subject property for the growing of assorted landscaping plants, including ground covers, shrubs, and trees. The addition of this property will provide an increased growing area to meet the demands of the landscaping industry. SL Kuahara Partners qualifies as an ag company with more than 75% of its members qualifying as a bona fide farmer. Sandy Kuahara, the sole owner of SL Kuahara Partners, qualifies as a bona fide farmer with more than 2 years of full-time farming experience and satisfies the eligibility requirements pursuant to the HAR. There is a consideration of $100,000 for General Lease 4459. This lease does not include a participation clause. We recommend that the Board of Agriculture approve the assignment of General Lease 4459 from Paul Jerome Belberti and Cirilla Belberti, lessee assignor, to SL Kuahara Partners LLC, assignee, and the consideration of $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Does anyone from the public wish to provide testimony?
There are no hands raised at this
No
time.
hands. Thank you. Board discussion.
Sure.
Vincent.
Aloha, Brandy.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you please, when it says the consideration of $100,000, how's that paid? Is that a balloon payment or is it a loan that people take out, or how does it normally handled?
It depends. Some farmers will take out a loan. Some of them will finance it on their own. In this case, I had a feeling this question was going to be raised, and I would have to go back to see. I can't remember what was the terms of the in the purchase agreement. But Sandy, I believe, is here. If she can be called forward, she would be able to answer that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Is it Sandra? Possibly?
Sandra Kuahara?
Let's see here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Real well, thank you.
I'm sorry, for the record, could you just identify yourself because your title is only Sandra?
Yes,
Just so
my name
the
is Sandra
minutes-
Kuahara. I am the owner of SL Kuahara Partners LLC.
Thank you, Sandra. I think, did you hear the question? Vincent, if you mind repeating it?
Yeah, aloha, Sandy.
Hi.
Just wondering how this consideration of $100,000 is being paid.
We have an agreement with Mr. Balberti. We are going to be making monthly incremental payments to him upon closing through September of 2030. And then after that, there will be a final balloon payment to pay off. So we're financing on our own. We're not out a loan.
Okay. And if that for some reason defaults, then where does that fall onto regarding this lease?
Is that a question for Brandy?
Is that a question for me?
The two individuals outside the lease would be.
Only those two individuals, the Kuahara and the Belberti.
Right, so it doesn't fall.
Wouldn't be,
department.
I don't part with that. It says in consideration to give this gentleman.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Chair, I have a question. The 55-year lease ends in 2030. Randy, so does that mean the Kuaharas can come back for extension on the lease or a new lease?
Yes, there is because this is a non-ag park lease, so the conversion clause is definitely an option. It just depends on, we're coming upon our, let's see, the 5-year limit, right? So in order for us to convert to a new long-term lease, we can only do it within 10 years and 5 years of the lease expiration. So we're coming upon that. So hopefully if this gets approved, then the next step would be to either extend the lease or convert to a new long-term lease.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fred.
Yeah, question for Brandy. Aloha, Brandy.
Hi, Fred.
What does it mean that it does not include a participation clause? Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, sure. So some of the leases, they include what they call a participation clause, where if there is a if there's a consideration on the lease, there's a financial, or there is a worksheet that we use to determine if the state is owed any money. So let's say that there's a profit off of the sale, then there's a calculation that we would use to determine if the state gets some of that.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Further board discussion? Hearing, seeing none, calling for the vote. Are there any objections or recusals to approving the request? Seeing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you.
Good luck, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to the item B5. Request for approval to sublease between the Hamakua Agricultural Cooperative, lessee sublessor, and Robert Rostow and Lynn Rostow, sublessee. May I have a
Please.
motion to approve?
Sorry.
May I have a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
Jimmy, second.
Seconded.
Second by Fred. Thank you. Presentation by staff. Is
Okay.
that Brandy?
Yeah, that's me again.
Okay.
So Robert and Lynn Rostow are requesting to sublease Lot 8A under General Lease 7012, consisting of approximately 2 acres. The subject property currently contains a variety of food crops and trees, such as but not limited to ulu, lychee, banana, and mango. Mr. and Mrs. Rostow would like to continue the cultivation of these crops. In addition, they plan to grow Hawaiian chili peppers. Mr. and Mrs. Rostow are the owners of Hawaiian Hotties, LLC, a Hawaii-based company focused on products created with and inspired by Hawaiian chili peppers. These peppers are used to create a myriad of value-added products, including but not limited to flavored popcorn, seasonings, coffee, and additives. The subject property will support the increase of their pepper production. For the last 3 years, Mr. and Mrs. Rostow have been farm workers for Donna Mitz, who is the current sublessee of Lot 8A. Through her mentorship and guidance, the Rostows gained knowledge in growing food crops, which have led to the creation of Hawaiian Hotties, LLC. Robert and Lynn Rostow qualifies as bona fide farmers with more than 2 years of full-time farming experience and meet the application and eligibility requirements in accordance with the HDOA. We'd recommend that the Board of Agriculture approve the sublease between the Hamakua Ag Co-op, lessee sublessor, and Robert and Lynn Rostow, sublessee for Lot 8A in the Hamakua Ag Park under General Lease 7012 through the expiration date of June 29th, 2033. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised. Board discussion.
Yeah, Chair.
Thank you, Vince.
Brandy, it's kind of intriguing to me, the Hamakua area, kind of rainy, huh? So I'm just
Yes.
thinking that growing peppers, the other leaseholder had success in growing peppers and these people are continuing to want to follow that model?
Yeah, I know they've been growing some peppers there. That was part of their they started producing some of that. So I guess it's been working because they wanna take over the sublease.
Right.
And this particular area is kind of dry along the Hamakua.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very windy. So I guess the rain clouds just kind of blow over a lot.
I see. Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further board discussion? Seeing none. Calling for the vote. Are there any objections or recusals? Hearing none. The motion is carried. The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. On to items B6. Certification of acreage assessments for the Honoka'a, Pauilo, Kahuku, Molokai, Waimanalo, and Waimea irrigation systems during the 2025 fiscal year. May I have a motion to approve the request? Vince, thank you. Second by Jimmy. And presentation by staff.
Good morning, Brian Cowell, Administrator, Agriculture Resource Management Division. This is the request to certify acreage assessments for the Honoka'a, Pauilo, Kahuku, Molokai, Waimanalo, and Waimea irrigation systems for the 2025 fiscal year. Section 167-19A, Hawaii Revised Statute states that the board shall determine and certify on or before June 30th of each year the amount of acreage assessments necessary in that fiscal year for the acquisition, construction, operation, and maintenance of irrigation facilities for each project and for the acreage of agricultural and pasture land of each land occupier within the project. For the 2025 fiscal year, the Agricultural Resource Management Division has determined that acreage assessments for the following irrigations are, and we've listed them out for the 5 systems, noting that only Kahuku is lower than the other 4, and that's due to not having any staff specifically assigned to that system. The acreage of agricultural and livestock lands for each land occupier within the irrigation systems are as follows, and again, they're listed below. Staff recommends that the board determine and certify that the amount of acreage assessments necessary for annual maintenance of the listed 5 irrigation systems for the fiscal year 2025 are as listed. 2, that the board determine and certify that the acreage of agricultural and livestock lands of each land occupier within the listed irrigation system is as set forth in attachments A through E. 3, that the board determine and certify that agricultural lands shall bear 100% of the annual acreage assessments for the Kahuku, Molokai, Waimanalo, and Waimea irrigation systems. And 4, that the board determine and certify that the agricultural and pastoral lands shall bear 70% and 30% respectively of the annual acreage assessments for the Honolulu irrigation system.
Thank you, Brian. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony?
There are no hands
No
raised.
hands? Thank you. Board discussion.
Chair.
Chair.
Right, how does it
Randy.
relate the acres and the acres assessment?
So essentially, once the amount, so let's just take the Waimea, for instance. The acreage assessment determination for Waimea is $94,476. So we just simply divide that amount by the assessed acreage and come out with a per acre value. So the larger systems would, like Molokai, would have a smaller per acre because they have much more acreage to distribute that over. And the smaller systems would have unfortunately higher amount.
And that determines what the water rate is gonna be?
No, it has nothing to do with the water rate.
Nothing to do with the water rate, okay.
It's just an annual thing that we have to do.
Further board discussion? Hearing, seeing none, calling for the vote. Any objections or recusals? Hearing, seeing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Unanimously. Thank you. So on to old business. Brian, I'm gonna call on you. We only have 4 members present that were present at the October, so no quorum again.
So technically, minutes don't have to be approved. Minutes have to be drafted, the draft has to be available for a certain number of days. If it's not approved, it's not approved. I think given the evolution of members, you may want to just take this off the calendar after today.
Okay, do I need board approval to do that?
No, I think you can just make that decision.
Just an FYI, we're going to be removing this item from the calendar, which is the approval of the October 24th, 2023 minutes due to consistent lack of quorum. Okay,
Well, I'm sorry, but you do have to ask for
public testimony.
public testimony, I know.
Any public testimony on this matter?
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised, thank you.
Wait, is that new business?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Hey. No, that we were voting on approving. Yeah, okay, so moving on to new business? Yeah.
Please come up, Senator. If I just make a note for the board, the agenda for new business is none. And so, in recognition of the senator's gracious decision to come today, I'm not gonna object if he wants to say whatever he wants to say.
I would like to testify on this item.
There is no item, I guess is my point. But I know you came all the way here, so I want to allow you to testify and say whatever you want to say. But I'm going to ask that the board not have a discussion today, but you can set any matter that you wish, or the chair can set any matter she wishes for discussion at another day. It's a sunshine problem because we have not identified this as any matter. No member of the public will know what's going to be discussed.
Knowing that, do you want to move forward, Senator?
I came to submit testimony on what I thought would be an item of new business. And so if I'm being allowed to testify, then I would like to submit the testimony.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so Chair, members, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. The main point of my testimony to begin at the end is that I'd like to respectfully request that a regular item be placed on the agenda related to invasive species in a form and a manner that the board feels is appropriate. And the reasoning is as follows. There were multiple pieces of legislation that were considered and passed in the legislature this year, consolidating the authority and jurisdiction of invasive species management under the Department of Agriculture, including potentially the phasing out of partner agencies that are undergoing active invasive species mitigation and eradication in my district, which includes the communities of Kailua and Kaneohe on the windward side of this island. At this point, it is unclear, is frustratingly unclear what level of coordination and organization there is currently as it relates to these partner agencies and within divisions of the Department of Agriculture. I know this because of personal experience over the last 10 months dealing with little fire ant infestations in my community, but also with the prevalence and spread of coconut rhinoceros beetle on Oahu, which is actually my most significant concern for the state of Hawaii, especially for the neighbor islands, which are not as impacted as Oahu is right now and are far more prevalent in their scale of agriculture as it relates to the economies of the neighbor island communities. A significant allocation of resources was appropriated to the Department of Agriculture this year for that specific purpose, invasive species eradication, control, monitoring, all of the necessaries. And I feel that the expenditure of those funds and implementation of those programs needs ongoing monitoring that would be most effectively done by this body. There are several memorandums of agreement, interim rules, permanent rules, and species-specific action plans and work plans that are in different stages of development by the department. And as a sitting senator, I can tell you it has been very frustrating to get accurate, timely information on the status of those different items. And my community is directly impacted by the department's ability to take action against invasives in a timely and effective manner. The department has come to multiple hearings before the legislature this year unprepared. And that is especially troubling when the department serves as both advocate, regulator, and subject matter expert. Personnel in multiple agendized briefings before the Senate have given conflicting testimony on matters of fact and have contradicted each other on records of events, on the department's position on issues, and on what actions the department did and did not actually take in response to specific questions. For example, in the summer of last year, in July to be specific, there was a meeting that was held between several legislators, including myself and community members from the windward side as to the status of the Chapter 4-72 permanent rules, which this body approved, I believe in February of last year. We were told in the meeting that the rules were being set aside because it was determined that a legal review was necessary by the Department of Agriculture's Deputy Attorney General because there were legal issues. That claim was proven false 2 weeks later when I and Representative Matayoshi from Kaneohe met with the Deputy Attorney General who oversaw the rules process, Jody Lee, who attested in that meeting that there were no legal issues. She had reviewed the proposal and that everything was good to proceed, as had been voted on by this board 4 months prior. The statement that was made by the department in a meeting with constituents of mine over a serious little fire ant outbreak in our community, the information given was false. And it need only be verified by making a phone call while we were still in the meeting in order to get some clarity on that. It was embarrassing for us to have to go back to community and explain to them that we've been given the wrong information and that they had been misled when the department should have known what it was talking about. In a briefing that we held at the end of, the beginning of May, I'll finish quickly after this. There were questions about the Punahou Carnival, Little Fire Ant investigation. A statement was made at the table that there was actually no evidence present that there was a little fire ant infestation at the carnival. That statement was rebutted by department personnel 5 minutes later. In that same briefing, which is archived on YouTube for everyone to see, there in fact was a positive test for little fire ant in products that were donated to the carnival. And then the investigation thereafter was incomplete, which triggered a lot of some of the items that have been controversial in the press over the last several weeks that I'm happy to discuss at the conclusion of this meeting off the record or offline in the interest of time. And finally, the question came up about in that briefing, the role of this department as both an advocate and a regulator. And the experience that I've had personally over the last 10 months, again, has been quite frustrating. And a discussion has already begun in my body about whether the department should continue to maintain this dual role when there's so much confusion as to whether one aim is prevailing over the other. So again, I respectfully ask for your attention on these issues at board meetings so that you, in your oversight role, and your role as experts, and your role as farmers, can continue to monitor and be consistently apprised of these matters, and so that the public can view them as well. And I would, again, like to make myself available for questions pertaining to this testimony, the Pualani incident, whatever else you would like to talk about. And I thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna guess that some of the board members are gonna have questions they would like to ask. I'm gonna ask them not to do it at the board meeting today because of the sunshine problem. This matter was not agendized and the public has not had a benefit. We can certainly agendize it for another meeting. And if you want to ask a question of the senator, any individual board member may do so offline. It's just, I just want to remind you not to discuss it amongst yourselves. So if you, for example, if you send an email, do not send it to all board members and to the senator with a question, because that would be a communication that would violate sunshine. You can, just to let you know, send it to one other board member. But that's, I'm sorry, all you can do. You can ask a question of a staff member of the Department of Agriculture. That is a staff member, is not a board member, so you may have a discussion with a staff member. So in anticipation, I know you.
I do intend to attend future meetings.
Oh, okay, so then if we have, that would be great. So if we have, we can agendize this for another meeting. Any and all questions could be asked in public with everyone listening as well. So I apologize that I'm placing restrictions on you, but I just need to watch out for compliance.
So can we now move to adjournment? Unless there's any other new business? Adjourn. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So, but I wanted to thank everybody. It's been really wonderful to be on this board and appreciate getting to know and work with you folks. So that's new business.
No business.
It is not board business, therefore may be discussed.
Right on.
No, we've
Thank you.
appreciated you, Vincent.
Very
Thank you.
much, very much, Vincent, very much. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So nice.
From Vince, thank you. Second,
Final act, right?
Fred? Did you second that, Fred?
Yeah, second.
Okay, second. Board discussion. Hearing none, seeing none, calling for the vote. Any recusals or objections? Thank you, everyone. The motion is carried unanimously. Meeting is adjourned at 10:39. Thank you.
Did you see this text I sent you yesterday, the video?
Yeah, but Vince, hold on.